Extreme detailing, restoring a flood-damaged Lamborghini Miura. Picture this in old Italian town. Narrow cobblestone streets, pastel-painted houses with balconies full of flowers, and the faint echo of church bells in the distance. To a tourist, it feels like time has stopped here. But hidden in one forgotten garage on the edge of this town, time had not only stopped, it had buried a treasure. That treasure was a car. Not just any car, but a Lamborghini Miura. A machine that many call the world's first true supercar. For decades, it sat there in silence. Dust settled over its golden curves, spiders made their homes in its wheel wells, and moisture crept into its leather seats. Once, this car was the center of attention, a symbol of speed, wealth, and passion. Now, it was little more than a ghost of its former self. But how did it end up like this? The story begins not with glory, but with tragedy. Years earlier, a devastating flood had swept through the region. Rivers burst their banks, water surged through homes, shops, and storage garages. Among the victims was this Miura. As the water rose, the car once carefully preserved was swallowed by the flood. Mud, silt, and debris invaded every corner. The V12 engine, once the heart of this beast, was left waterlogged. The interior soaked, carpets ruined, dashboard fogged, chrome eaten away by rust. To many, this would have been the end. A car drowned, a legend lost, another chapter in history closed forever. But here's the twist. Some people don't see wrecks. They see possibilities. For them, every rusted panel, every faded stitch of leather is a canvas waiting to be reborn. And when they found this Lamborghini Miura, lying there like a fallen star, they made a decision that would change everything. This car will live again. This is not just a story about metal and mechanics. It's about memory, passion, and the refusal to let beauty die. It's about how extreme detailing and restoration can turn devastation into resurrection. And at the heart of it all is one question. Can you really bring a drowned legend back to life? Over the next chapters, we'll take you through this journey, from the heartbreaking damage left by the flood to the painstaking artistry of stripping the car down, bolt by bolt, to the emotional moment when the Miura roared back to life. This isn't just a restoration, it's a rebirth. When water became the enemy, floods are strange things. They don't just destroy, they erase. Streets you once walked on vanish under brown, swirling water. Homes that held lifetimes of memories get swallowed whole. And for cars, those intricate machines built of steel, leather, and electronics, a flood is almost always the final curtain. The Lamborghini Miura in this story had been tucked away, resting quietly in storage, its golden body still catching the occasional glimmer of sunlight through dusty windows. It was not a car forgotten, but a car preserved, waiting for better days. But when the rains came, preservation turned into devastation. The water rose fast, first to the wheels, soaking the tires, then higher, until the doors were submerged. Within hours, the entire car was sitting in a soup of mud, oil, and debris. For most cars, this was just inconvenience. But for a Miura, a hand-built 12-cylinder masterpiece, this was catastrophic. When the floodwaters receded, the damage became painfully clear. The once proud nose of the Miura, designed with those signature eyelash headlights, was caked in grime. Its engine bay, once a shrine to Italian engineering, was choked with sludge. Electrical systems corroded, chrome trim dulled. The vibrant leather interior, soft, hand-stitched, and luxurious, was stiff, moldy, and falling apart. And worst of all, the heart of the Miura, its transverse-mounted V12 engine, was waterlogged. For a normal car, a ruined engine is just an expensive repair. For a Miura, whose engine was a piece of art, it felt like sacrilege. This wasn't just mechanical damage. It was a wound to history. Most insurers would have written it off. Total loss. End of story. And in truth, many owners would have accepted that. Who has the money, patience, and insane dedication to bring something like this back from the grave? But this wasn't just any Miura. This was one of only about 750 ever built between 1966 and 1973. And beyond the numbers, it carried a weight far greater than money, legacy. Because you see, the Miura isn't just another classic car. It's the car that changed everything. Before the Miura, Lamborghinis were impressive, but they weren't legends. Then came this machine, sleek, radical, and impossibly fast for its time. It set the template for every supercar that followed. Mid-engine, exotic looks, a blend of art and danger. Even Enzo Ferrari, who had dismissed Ferruccio Lamborghini as just a tractor maker, had to admit the Miura was a masterpiece. So, to see one drowned, broken, and decaying in silence, it wasn't just sad. It felt like watching a priceless painting rot in a basement. This is where emotion enters the story. When the restoration team discovered this car, they didn't see a wreck. They saw the outlines of greatness beneath the mud. They knew that saving this Miura wouldn't be easy or cheap. It would take thousands of hours of labor. It would demand patience, obsession, and almost surgical precision. But to them, it was worth it. Why? Because cars like the Miura are not replaceable. You can't just order another one. You can't replicate the way it was built by Italian craftsmen in the 1960s, when car manufacturing was still closer to artistry than assembly. Every dent, every rust spot, every ruined stitch, it wasn't just damage. It was a reminder of how fragile beauty can be. And it was also an invitation, a challenge, a dare from history itself. Will you let this legend die, or will you fight to bring it back? And so, the decision was made. This flood-wrecked Lamborghini would not be abandoned. It would be reborn. The restoration journey begins. Restoring a car is not just about tightening bolts and spraying paint. At its best, it's an act of archaeology. Every screw you turn, every panel you remove, tells a story of the past, sometimes glorious, sometimes tragic. With the flood-damaged Miura, the journey began the same way all great restorations do, with patience and humility. The team approached the car almost reverently. From the outside, it still looked like a Miura, a wedge-shaped masterpiece with curves that seemed sculpted by the wind itself. But beneath the surface, it was a wounded animal. The first step was disassembly, the careful process of taking it apart piece by piece, like unwrapping a long-lost treasure. Stripping it down, every panel came off with surgical care. The doors were lifted, the nose cone detached, the engine hoisted out. Each piece was catalogued, photographed, and set aside. Nothing could be rushed, because a Miura is not a car you fix. It's a car you preserve. Inside the cabin, the devastation was heartbreaking. The leather had stiffened into cracked sheets. The seats reeked of mildew. Carpets crumbled at the touch. Even the dashboard, once a proud cockpit of gauges and switches, was warped by water. Yet, the team handled it all with respect. These weren't just ruined materials. They were remnants of an era when driving was more than transportation. It was theater, the cleaning ritual. Once stripped, the car underwent what restorers call deep cleaning. Not just soap and water, but hours, days of meticulous work. The body shell was pressure washed, revealing the bare metal beneath years of filth. Rust spots were identified and carefully treated. The delicate chrome trim was polished until it reflected light again, like jewelry rediscovered in the dirt. Tiny screws, nuts, and bolts were individually soaked, brushed, and restored to health. Even the smallest part mattered, because when you're reviving a Miura, details are not optional. They're the whole point, saving the heart. Then came the hardest part, the engine. The transverse-mounted V12 is what made the Miura legendary. Seeing it choked with sludge was almost unbearable. But where others saw a disaster, the restorers saw a challenge. The engine was torn down to its core. Pistons, crankshafts, carburetors, every single part was disassembled, inspected, and cleaned. Rusted pieces were restored or replaced with painstakingly sourced originals. Gaskets were remade, Carburetors were ultrasonically cleaned until they looked factory fresh. It wasn't just about getting the engine to run again, it was about restoring it to the exact sound, feel, and fury it had in the late 1960s. When that V12 screamed, it wasn't just noise, it was music, a song of Italian passion. The restorers wanted to hear that music again. The craft of detailing is often misunderstood as just polishing and waxing. But in extreme restorations like this, detailing becomes art. The paintwork was stripped back, exposing every imperfection. Old dents were massaged out. Flood damage marks were erased. The Miura's body was then resprayed in its original shade, a breathtaking golden hue that shimmered under the lights, bringing back memories of its showroom glory. The interior was completely rebuilt by master upholsterers, using the same techniques and materials Lamborghini craftsmen used decades ago. New leather was cut, stitched, and fitted with precision, returning the cabin to its former elegance. Every switch, every dial, every stitch mattered. Because this wasn't just restoration, it was resurrection, the emotional weight. For the team, it wasn't just about mechanics. Every day they worked on the Miura. They felt the weight of history on their shoulders. They weren't just fixing a car, they were giving a legend its voice back. At times, the process was frustrating. Rust revealed hidden damage. Electrical systems proved stubborn. Original parts had to be hunted down from obscure corners of the world. But through it all, the passion never wavered, because this wasn't about convenience. It was about love for cars, for history, for the artistry of the Miura. And slowly, like a sculpture being revealed under a sculptor's chisel, the Miura began to return to life. Its lines regained their sharpness. Its interior smelled once again of fresh Italian leather. Its engine, once silent, began to hint at the roar that had shaken roads half a century ago. This was not the end of the journey. Far from it. But for the first time since the floodwaters swallowed it, the Miura was no longer a ghost. It was a car again. The rebirth. First startup and emotional return. There's a moment in every restoration that feels almost sacred. After months of work, sweat, and patience, you finally turn the key or press the button and wait to hear whether the machine you've poured your soul into still has a heartbeat. For the Lamborghini Miura, that moment was nothing short of emotional. The anticipation, the day had finally arrived. The golden Miura sat proudly in the workshop, fully reassembled. Every curve gleamed, the chrome shone like jewelry. Inside, the cabin smelled of fresh Italian leather, with dials and gauges restored to perfection. From the outside, it looked like it had just rolled off the production line in Sant'Agata, circa 1967. But beauty alone wasn't enough. A Miura is defined by its sound, its furious, operatic V12 symphony. Without that, it's just a sculpture on wheels. The team gathered around. Cameras were set up. The owner, visibly nervous, placed his hand on the key. For a moment, there was silence, everyone holding their breath. Then, with a twist of the wrist, the engine cranked. The first roar. At first, there was a cough, then a sputter. For a terrifying second, it seemed like the Miura might stay silent. But then, it happened. The V12 roared to life. Not politely, not hesitantly, but with a ferocity that echoed through the workshop walls. The sound was raw, metallic, alive. It wasn't just an engine running, it was a voice returning after years of silence. Some clapped, others just stood frozen, grinning ear to ear. One of the mechanics wiped his eyes, muttering, "That's the sound of my childhood poster coming alive." The exhaust crackled. The idle settled into a deep, throaty growl. And for everyone present, it was like being transported back to an era when cars weren't muted by regulations, when they spoke with passion, when they were built to stir souls. The emotional connection. For the owner, this was more than mechanical. He placed his hand on the steering wheel, almost like a handshake with a long-lost friend. His father had once driven this very car, taken it on roads where it turned heads and broke hearts. The flood had nearly stolen that legacy. But now, sitting behind the wheel, hearing the V12 sing again, he felt that connection return. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Sometimes, emotions are louder than words. The first drive. The real test wasn't in the workshop. It was out on the open road. With the engine warmed up, the team carefully guided the Miura outside. The sunlight hit its golden paint, and for a moment it looked less like a car and more like a piece of moving art. The owner slid into the seat, buckled in, and gently pressed the throttle. The Miura crept forward, smooth yet powerful. Then, as he reached the road, he gave it more gas. The V12 screamed, not a desperate cry, but a triumphant aria. Tires bit the tarmac, the car surged ahead, and suddenly the flood, the mud, the silence, they were all gone. What remained was pure joy. Spectators who had gathered outside clapped and cheered as the Miura passed. Phones were raised, but many lowered them quickly, wanting to experience the moment with their own eyes, not just through a screen. Symbolism of revival. That first drive wasn't just about a car. It was about what the Miura represented, resilience. Here was a machine written off as a casualty of nature's wrath, transformed back into a rolling masterpiece. Its scars had been healed, but its story remained etched in every nut and bolt. It wasn't just restored, it was reborn. And for everyone who witnessed it, there was an undeniable truth. If a flood-damaged Miura could rise again, so could we. The car became more than steel and rubber. It became a metaphor for hope, for refusing to let tragedy define the ending. The celebration. Back at the workshop, champagne corks popped. The restoration team laughed, hugged, and savored the moment. This wasn't just a job completed, it was history preserved. For some, it was the pinnacle of their careers. For others, it was a lifelong dream realized. The Miura sat there, still rumbling softly, as if proud of its own comeback. Its golden paint shimmered in the evening light, and everyone who looked at it knew they were standing in the presence of something rare. Not just a car, but a story, legacy, and reflection. When the dust of the flood had settled, when the months of restoration had ended, and when the Lamborghini Miura once again roared down the open road, something became clear. This wasn't just about a car. It was about what the Miura stood for, and what its revival meant to everyone who witnessed it. The Miura has always been a legend. When it was first revealed in 1966, it stunned the world. It wasn't just the fastest car of its time, it was the birth of the modern supercar. Its mid-engine layout, its outrageous styling by Bertone, and that fire-breathing V12 made it a dream machine that defined an era. Rock stars, movie icons, and kings owned Miuras. For many, it was the poster pinned on bedroom walls, the unreachable fantasy. But what made this flood-damaged Miura so special wasn't its price tag or rarity. It was the reminder that even legends can be fragile. Even the greatest machines can fall victim to time, to circumstance, to tragedy. And yet, through passion, skill, and determination, they can rise again. The legacy of the restoration. The story of this Miura's resurrection isn't just another chapter in the book of car restorations. It's one of the purest. Think about it. A car once drowned in silence, written off as a wreck, became a beacon of resilience. Every scratch buffed, every wire replaced, every stitch resewn was a testimony to human patience and artistry. The team that brought it back didn't just fix a car, they protected a piece of history. For the owner, it was deeply personal. He didn't just get his father's Miura back, he regained a connection to his family, his memories, his heritage. Watching the golden coupe glide down the road once again was like hearing a loved one's voice after years of silence. And for the craftsman, it was validation, proof that their hands, their skills, and their passion could stand against the forces of time and nature. The broader message: every bond finds, every restoration, every revival carries a lesson. The Miura story teaches us that beauty can be rebuilt, that loss doesn't have to be permanent, and that history can live again if we choose to honor it. In a world obsessed with the new, the latest phones, the newest models, the next big thing, the Miura reminds us that sometimes the most meaningful stories are found in the old, in things that carry scars, in things that have lived, fallen, and risen again. It's easy to celebrate perfection fresh out of the factory, but to celebrate imperfection, to embrace something battered and broken and still see its worth, that's where true passion lives. From car to symbol, the restored Miura now sits proudly in collections, but it carries with it more than horsepower or prestige. It carries symbolism. To enthusiasts, it's a reminder of why we fell in love with cars in the first place. Not just because they move us physically, but because they move us emotionally. To restorers, it's a reminder of their craft's power, the ability to resurrect what others may give up on. And to ordinary people, it's a universal metaphor. No matter how deep the flood, no matter how broken the machine, with patience and love, life can roar again. In the end, this isn't just the story of a flood-damaged Lamborghini Miura. It's the story of resilience, of memory, of human connection. A reminder that even when fate tries to drown beauty, it can be pulled back into the light. The Miura's engine doesn't just sing, it tells a story of Italy in the 1960s, of a father and son, of a flood that nearly erased it all, and of the hands that refused to let history die. And maybe that's why, when the golden Miura rolls down the road, people don't just see a car, they see hope, they hear triumph, they feel life. Because in that roar, there's a lesson for us all. No matter how broken we become, restoration is always possible.